There's a human experiment going on in what Denmark calls its ghettos.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
They're kicking immigrant families out.
They knew that there were people living there before them, and they were evicted.
You can't live here, they're being told, because of where you come from, even if you've done nothing wrong.
To be officially a ghetto, there have to be at least 1,000 residents, of whom 50% are non-Westerners.
It's not just people with that label. Entire communities are being broken up.
It was not a ghetto. I had a very nice time.
Thousands have been evicted from homes they've lived in for decades.
And there are other calculations too, based on crime, unemployment, basic education and earnings.
And there's a warning to children. If you're scared, you have every right to be.
Papa, fortæl. Hvad sker der? Tager de børnene? Hvad hvis de kommer og tager mig?
Europe's top court says this could be racism.
The Danish government was surprised by this ruling.
Is the country solving a problem or creating a new one? Is this integration or discrimination?
There are now only 4 families left in this block. The rest have been forced out.
What is life really like in the so-called ghettos? Welcome to Beyond Borders. It's a cold morning and a biting wind blows off the water as we join one of the boats that show off the tourist highlights in Denmark's capital, Copenhagen.
So we are now approaching another statue, and it's of course the statue of the Little Mermaid. And right now you can see that the king or the queen actually home, because they live in the building here closest to us on the right hand side.
While we're here, Danes are about to vote in a general election in which the Ghetto Law, also known as the Parallel Societies Plan, is hardly an issue. All the main parties think it's working, yet the European Court of Justice says this may be racist and has sent a final decision back to Denmark's own courts.
The Danish government was surprised by this ruling. In a way, I find it interesting that it is a foreign TV team that comes to Denmark and explains these problems and these dilemmas, because that's not an issue that has really been brought up much in the Danish media. At the end of the day, it might be a possibility that there will be compensation claims for the people who lived in the ghetto. But aside from that, I mean, this has been going on for 10 years. It is a very long period of time that the Act has been in place, and also for that reason it was a surprise that the ECJ came to this conclusion.
Our journey around Denmark takes us north to Aarhus on the Jutland Peninsula, to Odense on the island of Funen, and to Copenhagen. They are the country's 3 biggest cities, and in Aarhus and Odense, they have the largest of what are called hard ghettos, those with the highest crime and unemployment rates. In Aarhus, the performance artist Chadi says his short play called God Save Denmark is a warning to beware of a country that doesn't love you back. It's about a father reading a horrifying bedtime story to an already frightened child.
Og han ser dem med det samme. Det er dem, der kommer om natten. Han skynder sig at vække sin familie op. Børnene, de er forvirrede, de er skræmte. Børnene, de klamrer sig til deres mor. De kan høre dem. De er kun få skridt fra deres dør. Familien ved, hvad der nu venter dem.
The them he speaks of are the authorities, and what awaits them, Chadi believes, is a lifetime of mistrust.
I believe, sadly, that this is a country where if you're like a Muslim or if you're dark-skinned, you have to be prepared for this country. You have to be tough.
Lad, bare fortæl. Hvad sker der? Tager de børnene? Hvad nu hvis de kommer og tager mig? Og selvom faren aldrig rigtig beskrev dem, der kommer om natten, så kunne man så se dem for sig. Klart og tydeligt. Store, farlige trolde, der kommer om natten og stjæler folk fra deres senge.
I stopped pleasing for a long time ago. I stopped pleasing all of Denmark. I realized there are some people who are idiots and will always be racist and whatever, and there will always be people who are more open, no matter where you are, even like in the Muslim communities, you know. So I just wanted to like connect with people who wants unity.
Before, we didn't have any roads inside of Ghetto. It was one big green park.
In the same neighbourhood, we're shown the view from a balcony by someone who's lived here since she was a child in the 1970s.
And so they built this, and we're not so happy about it because it doesn't really fit in. The lake is still there, but you can't see it anymore.
What do you think of that?
I think this is ugly.
Very ugly?
Yes.
Homes that have been torn down, others spruced up, views obliterated, and the community, she says, hollowed out. In one block where once more than 40 families lived, there are now 4. Long-term residents have been forced out. In another 4 blocks, there is just one family living in each. This apartment is now the local museum, a time capsule of the area's past.
Hello.
With Soviet-era posters harking back to an age when young would-be revolutionaries once talked of radical change to any neighbours who were willing to listen. The change that has come isn't to Hella's liking.
You don't have parallel society in Denmark. There were so many people going against this, people from universities and so. But the politician, they wanted to, you know, in elections, it's always good to do something in Ghetto.
Populist.
Yeah.
Crimes involving robbery, burglary and theft in Denmark have fallen significantly in the last decade. It's recently been ranked in the top 10 of countries considered peaceful and safe. But there's no proof that this is because of the parallel societies policy.
Our
taxi driver on the edge of Copenhagen is showing us what was once labelled a hard ghetto, but which has now been removed from that list. In 2022, part of the area was described as the world's coolest neighbourhood by Time Out magazine.
På den ene side, den kilde, vi kan se, den hedder Superkilden, og der er monumenter fra 40-50 lande forskellige steder på den her Superkilde.
It was residents here who led the campaign to get the law tested, and which led to the ruling by Europe's top court.
We've been told that these places are difficult and have trouble, and that there's crime, and that they're not very good places. What do you say to that?
Det hænger ikke sammen med fakta, fordi hvis du spørger politiet, så er kriminaliteten i hele Danmark og i boligområderne faldet meget gevaldigt, så det er ikke korrekt.
Has the crime rate fallen because of the Ghetto Law, because people have been moved out?
Nej, det har ikke noget med det at gøre, og hvis du tager også før man lavede den her Ghetto Law, der var kriminaliteten også faldet ret meget.
What problems, in your opinion, have these ghetto laws caused?
Altså, det værste er, at lovlydige borgere er blevet tvangsudsmidt af deres hjem, uden at de har gjort noget som helst forkert.
All of the estates we visit are run by non-profit housing associations alongside the local authority. And the night we're here, there's a residents' meeting to be chaired by our taxi driver. Bovita is the housing association, and those here have a list of complaints they want to discuss. However, when we introduce ourselves to the association's representatives, they say we shouldn't be there as we haven't been invited. Next, they leave the room to make what appear to be calls about our presence.
SMS. Det er godt. Den tid til mig, ikke?
Then they leave altogether, with residents unable to get their answers or indeed ask any questions. Way north of this Copenhagen suburb, in Aarhus, the man in charge of another housing association shows us a scale model of one redevelopment and the changes he's been told to make. His group was behind the new red buildings, earlier described as very ugly from the museum balcony.
These 3 blocks have been knocked down already.
And are these ones scheduled?
These 2 blocks are scheduled to be knocked down.
He says the work of the last 10 years has been to improve overall living conditions and takes us to where apartment blocks are being renovated.
It has dramatic effects for families in the neighborhood, and some are hit to on an individual level unfair extent because they have to leave an apartment that they love and that they have treated good and been good neighbors from. That's a shame on an individual level, sad and
can't it be avoided?
And truly a cost. I think it can't be avoided. With the strategy that has been chosen. But of course we are trying to help all the families as good as possible to relocate to other apartments here locally or around the city.
And do you feel proud of what you're doing?
I absolutely feel proud about what the Housing Association is doing in this neighborhood. I think we are in a way pioneers as a housing association, being pioneers in showing how is it actually possible to improve quite dramatically a neighborhood that used to be seen as the worst neighborhood in the city, probably in Denmark.
There's defiance, though, at the nearby block of flats that was pointed out to us by Hella Hansen, the head of the local residents association. It's where just 4 families remain, and she takes us to meet Ezzedine Azam, who lives at the top of a stairwell.
This is a painting of Ezzedine in his bus. He drives a local bus. He's been doing that for 12 years. It used to be the door where you could go into the
emptied apartment next door has a few reminders of when he had neighbours. On the way up, we meet Esther, who as part of a television experiment was asked to live here for 6 months. She stayed 6 years.
It was not a ghetto. I had a very nice time. If I get told that you are not welcome here, you have to move just because your parents were born in some funny place, I would feel very hurt.
There are cartoon murals depicting those behind the local ghetto plan.
There was no one living here, so and Ezzedine, he wanted also to have a painting in his stairway, like we did in the other stairways. So we made this bus, we called it the Clown Bus.
Ezzedine has raised his family here and is refusing to move out.
Området er meget flot, og det er et godt sted at bo. Og jeg synes omkring os der er mange ting som man har brug for, og så der ligger alt omkring os.
What does it do to your head to know that this is all going on, that you could lose your home?
Alene at man bor alene i sådan en opgang, uden naboer, uden nogen omkring os, det gør det også, at vi har det ikke så godt. Vi har ikke sådan normalt liv med naboer, med fællesskab, som vi har haft før. Og det er det, at det gør det lidt mærkeligt, at man bor her. Men det gør ikke noget. Vi fortsætter.
On the one hand, a respectable family in an unhappy situation. On the other hand, a sense in some Danish quarters that immigrant families come here with what will one day prove to be a problem for society as a whole. This migration expert explains what some of the complaints have been.
They're bringing in spouses from the countries of origin. Some of them are being forced into marriages, and then you start getting sort of legislation saying this is becoming problematic. But an aspect of that is also that Denmark has a very comprehensive welfare state. And that means that when people can't make their own money, they can get income support. And it was very evident, for instance, through the 90s, that a lot of these immigrant and refugee families, a lot of them were on income support rather than in the labor market. And that is then a problem because we have to have a very high employment rate if this whole comprehensive welfare state is going to sort of work.
For those who accuse people in the ghettos of being work shy, this man has an answer. His restaurant is inside Aarhus' best-known food market and takes struggling immigrants on as workers. People the government tells him they can't help.
They ask, can you use this man? He have few problems, 1, 2, 3 problems.
Metin says he's now helped more than 100 people.
Has it always been a success?
Some of them, I think 80% of them are success.
Fantastic.
As they spend time in the kitchen or waiting at tables, he tries to show them how to be Danish.
I help them with the language. I help them with how they have to act. I help them with telling them what is the standard in Denmark. You know, we are not in Africa or the Middle East or in India. We are in Denmark. There's a different standard here. You can't act like you are in your home country. You are a guest here and you have to, what they say,
fit in.
Of course, they have to fit in the system.
Tak for mig.
Selv tak. Kan I have en god dag? Tak for besøget.
In Hans Christian Andersen's hometown of Odense, there was no fairy tale ending, even after this man helped to force a vote in Parliament to overturn the ghetto policy. MPs decided to keep the law as it is.
We knew that we didn't have a majority in Parliament to sort of support our petition, but we also did it to sort of show the politicians that we are a lot of people against this.
Ibrahim lives in Voldsmusa, what's described as the largest ghetto in the country, and is studying for his master's degree.
We live in a marginalized area that is really being used by politicians to gain racist voters. Like, it's really easy to talk about my living area as a problem, as a place with a high crime, even though we don't have that, in order to get voters. And when they do that, this area becomes also a key, or it gains a lot of attention from media and other people.
Many people he knows well in what he describes as a tight-knit community have had to leave.
The most of us who are employed, we work, we pay our taxes, we are a part of society. Many of us are actually involved more than many other people, like with volunteer work, with trying to create this positive development in these areas. And the reward is that we are being punished. And that's not fair. That's not liberal, actually.
For every family that is no longer there, new neighbours will move in, as the area is supposedly improved.
The way my parents raised me is to welcome everyone. So a part of me is saying, yes, I have to welcome them. But another part is telling me, no, because that's wrong. And they knew that. When they moved in, they knew that there were people living there before them. And they were evicted.
Hans Christian Andersen's stories were often about overcoming adversity and being resilient. Thomas Skov Jensen says he'll need to be strong as he waits for his home to be demolished. Thomas is campaigning for his local MP, one of the few in Parliament who wants an end to the ghettos policy.
It's so sad. It's so sad. In my where I lived on the first floor, on the fourth floor. There was a lady who moved in when it was built in '68. So all her kids have lived there with her husband, and all her life has been in that apartment. And she's also gonna be kicked out.
The man taking the legal battle to Denmark's courts says basing a parallel society law on employment, criminality, income level and education might have been okay. The mistake was including ethnicity.
For some reason, you link it to how people look, dress, pray, talk, which, based on the statistics, does not compute. So that's just what we're saying. We're saying, oh yeah, you could just have done the regulation of the first 4 criteria. Nobody would have worried, and it's not discrimination per se. But they chose something differently, and I think that is a political choice more than anything else.
Wouldn't it be easier just to say, look, we're tired of this, let's just get on with our lives?
Yes, it's been going on now for 5 years, where we have challenged this, but I think one misses the main point here, that this is not about housing or moving out, it's about discrimination. And one could of course say, just accept being discriminated against, stop fighting it. But that is what the case is, in this case that I litigate, is about actually. It's about discrimination based on how you look, how you pray, what you eat, where you live, and together with whom you live.
So perhaps a few words chosen more wisely, and it might not have come to this. Denmark's courts have a decision to make, and Parliament must obey the law as laid down by the judiciary. But even if there are changes, this, as has been pointed out, has been going on for a long time, and for thousands of people, there will be no going back, quite literally. Other countries are keen to see what the courts decide, interested to know whether a problem has been solved or if a new one has been created. As Ezadine does weekend chores at the bottom of his stairwell in northern Denmark, he can have no idea what the future holds. Like the toy train nearby, once played on by the children no longer there, he's stuck, unable to move forward. What's affected him and thousands more may yet be ruled illegal, but the damage is already done.